When I started this channel, I never expected that I'd become known for my failures. Or more accurately, where I put my failures. The box of shame. It's become such an icon that it's now receiving international fan mail.
Dearest box of shame, I hope this parcel reaches you. For so long, I've watched you gobble up regret and remorse from afar, and I have to say that I'm continually awed. We haven't got boxes of shame down here, just a nod of the head, and the age-old "she'll be right." But this bungle absolutely deserves your expert attention. Yours graciously, shamefully, and distantly, not an engineer.
Looks like we're gonna need an upgrade. Sure, this is a loose premise for a project, but I couldn't pass up the chance to work with Rowan, aka not an engineer. After all, he did send me the most delicious pieces of shame to feed the boss. It's only a matter of time before my own foibles exceeded this one anyway, so rather than become a better machinist, I'm going to make a bigger box. My current box of shame is made of wood, like a good box should be, and this one uses cleverly named box joints on the corners, and that's boring. So I'm going to swank it up a bit and try my hand at some true dovetails. One last thing. I suck at woodworking. I suck a lot less at machining though, so I'm going to make the new box out of metal. But I also don't want it to weigh an imperial ton, a metric ton, or as us Americans call it, a butt ton. So there'll be some wood in there too. My project, my rules. Anyway, I did partially model something to at least keep my scope creeping self pointed in one direction. But I won't spoil the surprise. I'm sure at this point in your life you can imagine what a box looks like. And this looks nothing like that. Let's get the materials together. I've got some half-inch steel for all the steel parts, some brass for extra schmanciness, and some wood that I'll find later. The important thing is, all this was free. Surely this is a harbinger of a smooth project to come. The keen-eyed among you will notice a different bandsaw blade across these shots, and that's for good reason. I dulled the first one. The side effect of being lazy and not swapping to the correct blade in the first place is you end up doing it anyway after destroying the first one. If you like racking up heartache, I highly recommend this approach. I'm not a big fan of how much this material is bending as I cut it down. I mean, look at this. And this. Giving Mrs. Chiquita a run for her money. Fingers crossed though, the milling will take care of this. In general, squaring up stock is a time suck. What you see in these shots was literal hours of work. Probably doesn't help that I'm fly cutting everything, but I'm a sucker for that surface finish. Plus, getting all these parts to precise dimensions will save me a real headache later on. Having a solid foundation like this is super important for more than just machining projects though, and that's what's so great about today's returning sponsor, Brilliant. On Brilliant.org, they make it easy to build a solid foundation in math, science, data science, computer science, and engineering with bite-sized interactive lessons. The key word there being interactive. No tedious worksheets or infuriating word problems here. This is nothing like your old boarding school, and no one will slap your wrist if you get the answer wrong. In fact, Brilliant will guide you through the lessons so you really master the subjects. Just answer a few simple questions and your learning path will be made custom, just for you. In 15 minutes or less a day, the hands-on experience of each lesson with Brilliant will have your brain engaging in active learning, making it 6 times more likely you'll actually remember what you just learned compared to sitting through a video or a lecture. With thousands of lessons from the most basic all the way up to the advanced stuff, there's something for everyone to learn. So save yourself the heartache of learning things the boring way, and use Brilliant to help you get the grade, land that promotion, or master problem-solving skills that'll help you keep your projects out of the box of shame. I'm sorry, buddy. Maybe if I'd have taken this measurement course on Brilliant, I could have saved you. Rest easy, friend. Keep your projects out of the box of shame, work on your mental fitness, and try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for 30 days when you visit brilliant.org/inheritance or click the link in the description. And if you upgrade to an annual premium account, you'll also get 20% off. Thank you, Brilliant. Now, let's get back to brass tacks. A non-zero motivation for incorporating this lovely material was just so I could machine it. But it's also going to add just the right amount of spiciness that I'm looking for in the final box. That's the front corner dovetail pieces, lid plates, some mystery brass, and most boxes have 4 corners, so I prepped some bars for the last 2. That just leaves one final material. The wood. Wow, this thing is huge, and it looks good too. Far too wide for what I need though, and I'd feel terrible ripping down this massive piece of mature walnut, or is it cherry? Whatever it is, it's way too pretty to be lopped down to hold my unmentionables. I know someone that might be willing to trade with me though. Meet my friend Craig, again. He's become quite the personality on this channel as well for all the pickles he's gotten me out of. But at least this time, I didn't come completely empty-handed. Unlike me, Craig is a big wood guy. He also likes woodworking, so he's bound to have a more appropriately sized board for my little project. After making a selection in his barn, we headed back to the shop to chop it up, and then changed our minds again, favoring this huge slab of walnut instead. It's also worth mentioning at this point that we did a little digging and discovered the board I brought wasn't walnut, nor cherry, or anything special for that matter.
That's a big poplar.
I may not identify as a woodworker, but even I know that this is a pretty bargain basement piece of wood. At least it's big, am I right? Despite my disappointingly average contribution, my buddy was willing to trade down anyway. And once again working with Craig, I somehow made out better from the exchange. But hey, in the world of hobby woodworking, one man's barn scraps are another man's barn scraps. That's enough barning around. Let's get back to the shop. I'm back at home base now, and it's time to turn those rough cuts into suitable boards for the box. I'll need to glue these 2 sections of walnut together to make a wide enough piece for the lid. I'll spare you the messy details here, and just give you a glimpse into why I don't like woodworking. Wood glue. Wood glue is the slug slime of my nightmares. It's everywhere. Once it's on you for life. It's on your hands, your clamps, your pants, your beard, everything. If you try to clean it up, it just comes back. Okay, I think that's enough woodworking for now. While that dries, I'm going to jump back over into my comfort zone. I'll start with the dovetails because honestly, due to their resemblance to woodworking, this is the part I'm most anxious to get right. But I'm much more comfortable at the mill than with a chisel, so my hopes are high. I'm going to start pretty simple here and remove most of the material where the dovetails will go. Okay, now for the fun part. Cutting the angled faces. It's absolutely critical that these dovetails be 15 degrees, otherwise, well, it won't look like this. But I couldn't locate a cutter to suit my very stringent requirements. So throw up the old side project counter, because I'm going to make my own. I could probably freehand grind something pretty close, but pretty close ain't going to cut it. I mean, it would cut, but never mind. I want this angle to be precisely 15 degrees, so I'll use the 2 most precise tools in this shop. The sine plate on the surface grinder. Now for the less precise, but equally important, rakes and reliefs. Now these I can grind by hand because clearance is clearance. Looking pretty sharp, eh? Now for the secret sauce. The often misused boring head. You see, with this, I can take what's supposed to be a stationary lathe tool and whip it around at several hundred RPM to make special geometries like, well, hang on, that's a terrible spot for the camera. It can make special geometries like this dovetail. Now I went through a lot of effort to make this cutter precise, but I also need the locations of these cuts to be precise as well. So once the depth is bang on, I can check the distance from the end with a gauge pin. Then just fine tune that and the other dovetails as well. The key thing to point out here is that for all these measurements, I'm reading from the same end of the part. The nerdy word for this is datum, or is it datum? Either way, it helps prevent tolerance stack up that could throw future features all out of whack. With the first sides done, I started working my way back across the part, cutting the other sides of the dovetails, and doing a similar gauge pin measurement to accurately track the progress. Of course, that only works if you don't forget how to read the frickin' calipers. Hard to see or explain, but I basically forgot to switch my brain from shrinking mode to growing mode, and the result was cutting 20 thou too far off this side. Luckily I have the special pen. We're early enough in the process that I can just widen the design 40 thou, 20 in each direction, to get everything back on track and keep it all symmetrical. I really don't want any more mistakes like this though. Ugh, saved it. Okay, enough doom and gloom. Time for the real apple of my eye, and probably yours too, the brass. These get a similar set of dovetails that should go a lot more smoothly now that I've fully activated my brain. Alright, piece of cake. If you don't count the 2 times I had to go and modify the cutter. Anyway, that's all the proper dovetail cuts complete, so it's time to work on the female portions of the joints. And in case you're wondering why we call this half of the dovetail female, it's because, well, I'll explain when you're older. To mill this material, we're going to have to turn things sideways. Luckily I know precisely how much. A 15-degree angle block makes this a simple vise tramming job. And then back to the straight end mill for some more gloriously chunky cuts. The only critical dimension here is the thickness of this remaining web, easy enough to measure, but something is amiss. A foot. Well, somehow, this face and this face aren't parallel. By a lot. Over 5 thou in just this short distance. Something is definitely here. And considering we just trammed the vise, I'm inclined to think it's the dovetail. I double checked the angle of the sign plate we ground the cutter on, and it still looks perfect. The cutter itself appears normal as well, but then it hit me. One minor oversight. One little red flag that didn't quite wave high enough for my excitable eyes to catch. The cutter, when mounted in the boring head, isn't on center. More accurately, the cutting edge isn't on center. May not seem like a big deal, but geometrically speaking, if this edge is forward or backwards of this center line, the effective cutting angle of this edge changes. So these dovetails that I went through such great effort to make precisely 15 degrees aren't. Luckily, I see an angle out of this mess. Just change the design to match whatever the angle truly is. Which we need to determine somehow. Actually, that's easy. I can just tram the vise to this already cut dovetail edge. Now to figure out what that new angle is, I'll tram a dial indicator to a dial protractor, and boom, 14.25 degrees. I'm no mathematician, but that's definitely not 15. I'll just update the model, again, and really this time, no more oopsies. There's literally nowhere else I can hide my mistakes in this design. Just when you thought we were done with dovetails, there's still a little bit left. We still have the female dovetails to cut in the steel. They're at the same 14¼ degree angle as the brass, only this time measuring is a bit tricky. I can't just read across the corner like this because the deburring I did to save my abused fingers removed this corner slightly. So I have to resort to another pin measurement by first clamping a flat parallel to the side. But other than that, this took an extremely long time just like everything else. Now with all the dovetail parts complete, let's see if we've got a match made in heaven. I guess the cat's out of the hat with the brass. It's going to be a fancy inlay between the steel bits. It's not even together all the way, and I'm pretty stoked for final assembly. But there's still a butt-ton more machining before we can get to that. First are some mortises in these long edges for attaching the wood. Though calling these mortises when it's steel offends my machinist's soul. So I'm going to call them slots. With that clarified, I'll drill out the ends, then let a roughing mill do its thing. As the old saying goes, every box has a bottom, so I'll mill a shallow groove in the lower end of each of these parts to accept that board. Then I'll squeeze a little more brass action just for the fun of it. Alright, these are really looking the business. Not bad for, 4 days of work. Time to start blitzing through the rest of these parts. Brace yourself for some gratuitous milling and drilling. I do love a roughing mill in steel. Cuts like a hot knife through butter, except maybe a little too easily. When you make mirrored pieces from one drawing, sometimes you mill right over that hole you just drilled. So this box of shame is going to have some shame baked right in. How authentic. On the bright side, symmetrical or not, it still looks cool. And running a finishing mill over it makes even our mistakes look like polished on purposes. These back corners also get slots, similar bottom board grooves, then some big meaty clearance chamfers that shouldn't be milled like this. This is a much safer setup. Okay, that's the 4 corners, but the best thing about a box of shame is that you can close the lid so that all your mistakes can't look at you while you're working. And it may not look like it, but these will make up the metal part of that lid. They have an integrated hinge, so get a reamed hole for the pivot point, then a rare, proper application of the boring head cuts the counter bore. A bit of milling on the backside for hinge clearance, a plethora of slots for joining the wood tenons, and of course, the chamfers. Almost finished, and I saved the funnest for last, rounding all the corners. Why is it fun, you ask? Because I get to use the radius fixture, of course. While I'm set up here, might as well switch to the chamfering bit to make this look proper sexy. I'll do a few of the smaller corners as well, and jump back to the other parts for one last piece of unfinished business. That's both halves of the hinges, but we don't want our lid going anywhere. You know Pandora's box? Well, they hadn't discovered hinge screws yet, and we all know what happened there. So we're going to need some screws. Finally, something to lathe. Despite the size of this hunk of brass, my screws aren't very big. I know it's a waste, but it's cheaper than waiting. The die holder makes threading this short little stud a cinch. Got a build video on that if you're so inclined. Then, after facing and drilling the opposite side, I'll use some machinist wizardry to pop a hex hole in the end. But really, this isn't wizardry at all, just a rotary broach. I also made a video about making this little dude. Anyway, that's 2 screws whipped up, and are a perfect fit in the assembly. I'm really loving the way this looks too. As you can probably tell, appearances are pretty important for this build, despite the ultimate purpose of holding literal junk. I already spilled the beans about the brass dovetail inlay, but I've got one more schmancy up my sleeve. I'm going to black oxide these parts. This treatment is generally reserved for steel that you don't want rusting, which I guess applies to everything on this box, but I'm only treating some of the components because I think it will look better. As long as this box never, ever leaves my dehumidified shop, no problemo. Alright, that's literally all the machining I get to do on this project. But I still need the wood, so I'm left with no choice but to do the woodworking. Let's get this over with. The planer generally hides in the barn, mostly because it's intimidated by my surface grinder. The result is a dusty, rusty, bird-shitty mess I have to clean before I can even use it. Making up a new counter generally makes things a little better, so let's throw that up there too. I may actively be cutting a piece of wood right now, but I'm a machinist through and through. So I brought my calipers out to measure the wood to the 1,000th of an inch, or as close as I could get it. Well, that was just plain fun, wasn't it? My other favorite place for storing my wood tools is on the house's porch. Makes it convenient for slicing one's own lunch meat, but the side effect is another rusty mess to deal with before I can even get started. Alright, let's cut these boards to size. In just my luck, it's perfect weather for such activities. Raining, cold, and windy woodworking. My 4 favorite things. My borderline numb hands won't stop me from properly measuring these boards though. On the bright side, the miter saw didn't need any cleaning at all. With all the boards to size, now I can work on the important stuff. I'll switch the table saw to a dado blade, which is just a girthier blade that I can adjust the width of. I'll use it to cut the tenons on the ends of the boards, and the groove for the bottom board. After the hastiest sanding job of my life, I skedaddled back to my warm and dry shop. Finally, we're in the home stretch. Got our wood, got our metal, let's assemble this shiz. Let's start with the brass and steel dovetails. Despite appearances, my forearms don't have enough meat on them to squeeze these together. So I'll use the vise in the mill, which also helps keep everything straight and square. Oh yeah. As the kids say, that looks absolutely fire. It took a lot of force to get these together, so I'm not worried about them coming apart, which is great because that means I won't need any glue. But I'm not completely free of the vile substance. Next is connecting the wood to the metal, which does require glue, but maybe being 2-part epoxy will make this a little more pleasant. Yeah, definitely not more pleasant. I thought wood glue was stressful, but the 5-minute setup time of this epoxy is something else. And if you hadn't noticed from the mission creep of every one of my videos, I like to take my time doing things. Combine that with machinist level woodworking tolerances that cause pieces not to fit together so smoothly and, well, I started to lose my marbles a bit. But like an angel sent from heaven, my wife appeared at the exact moment I was about to snap, and not only cheered me up, but helped me film this painful process. I'll let the video speak for itself.
It's beautiful.
Looks awesome.
It looks incredible.
Now, you're just gonna get together like a good little boy. So I did too much glue before. I did twice the amount this time.
Entirely of your own doing, but
Of course, everything's my own doing. Doesn't mean it was intentional. This is what drives me nuts. That makes me want to yeet this thing right out the window. Build a window just to yeet you out of.
extremely obvious that's poplar.
Yeah, I know. Once you cut into it, it's like, duh! Yeah, okay, jeez. I was like, why is that so high? Okay. We gloop it and bloop it. You came down at a very pivotal moment where I was losing my absolute shit.
I actually got about a third of the way down here. Like very loud crash.
That was probably the clamp I threw across the shop.
I love Sticky. Sticky is life. Sticky is my friend.
So sticky. Oh, there it goes. More sticky. Seriously, I can't tell what is sticky and what is me. I'm about to put this door.
The top,
lid.
the top door.
I'm gonna put the top door. I'm telling you to bring the camera over here.
Oh, okay.
Please go. The front is flush with the back. That means I did something right. Makes me cry. Please admire how little wiggle is in my... There's no wiggle. It's a wiggle-free box. It literally... Ah! Goes to clamp. I branded it. I want a bagel.
That's definitely all I can handle for today. I'll leave it clamped up and hope to return tomorrow with my will to continue restored.
Oh, no.
There it is, the devourer of miscalculations, the retirement home of crippled end mills, the keeper of dirty little shop secrets, and probably the prettiest garbage can any of us have ever seen. Seriously, I love everything about it. But there's just one small detail. It's alive! It's alive! You're probably hungry, little guy, aren't you? That belly looks awfully empty. Alright, well here comes the airplane. Meow. Can't forget Rowan's treats. And yeah, I guess you can have this one as well. Good boy. While Lil Boxy here digests his first meal, I want to thank Craig for the walnut boards that brought this project together in more ways than one. Also, thanks to Rowan, who's not an engineer, for sending his little bits of shame literally across the world to level up my humble little box. If you haven't found his channel yet, I implore you to give it a watch. Right now. Seriously. You won't regret it. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Yours graciously, shamefully, and distantly, not an engineer. P.S. I've also included some documents exposing my true role as head of engineering at my place of work that I think are safer kept with you. I trust your discretion.
Me.